Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It started in the living room. Clean lines, warm wood floors, the scent of fresh coffee still lingering in the air. Sophie stood by the bookshelf, arms crossed, while I sat on the couch, tying the laces of my running shoes like it was just any other Saturday morning. Except it wasn't. "I want a divorce," she said, clear as a bell. No lead-up, no apology, no explanation. I froze mid-knot, my fingers stilling. "You want to say that again?" I asked, not because I didn't hear her. I did, but because I needed to buy a second to breathe. She rolled her eyes and scoffed. "Come on, Daniel. You had to see this coming. We've been dead for years." I stood up slowly. "We've had arguments. That's not the same as dead." "You're predictable," she snapped. "I know every word you'll say before you say it. Every step you take is boring, safe, routine." I tilted my head. "And that's why you're walking away?" She smirked. "That's why I stopped looking forward to walking in the door." There it was. That knife, subtle but deep. I didn't yell, didn't throw anything. I met her eyes and said calmly, "Then you'll finally get to see how strong boring can be." Her expression changed. Just a flicker, but I saw it. Embarrassment. Shame. "What's that supposed to mean?" she said, folding her arms tighter. "It means I won't be your stepping stone, Sophie. If you're done, then be done. But don't pretend you're doing me a favor." She laughed bitterly. "Oh, now you're going to act like the victim?" "No," I replied, stepping toward her. "I'm not the victim. I'm the guy who paid the mortgage, cooked on Sundays, stayed when things got hard, while you checked out." "You think I checked out?" she shouted, color rising to her cheeks. "I think you quit trying," I said. "You got bored and decided that was reason enough to start planning your exit without even talking to me." "I didn't cheat on you," she snapped. "I didn't say you did. But planning your escape like it's a vacation? That's its own kind of betrayal." She turned away, pacing. "You always twist things. I need something real, excitement, passion. I feel invisible here." "You chose invisibility," I said, voice still calm. "I never stopped seeing you. You just stopped showing up." For a moment, she said nothing, just stared out the window, jaw clenched. Then, "I've already spoken to a lawyer." There it was. She wasn't warning me. She was declaring victory. "I figured," I said. "You've been treating me like a stranger for months." "I thought maybe you'd fight for us," she murmured. "I'm not fighting for someone who already packed a parachute." The silence stretched between us like a wire pulled tight. Then I walked past her, grabbed my keys off the table. "You're free, Sophie," I said, not looking back. "Let's see how exciting that feels when the dust settles." I stepped out of the house we built together, a house filled with memories and now haunted by echoes. The moment I closed the door behind me, the air felt different, lighter. But deep inside, I already knew this was just the beginning of the real fight. The road was nearly empty, just me, my hands clenched around the steering wheel, and a long stretch of Tulane blacktop slicing through the suburbs like a scar. The radio was off. I didn't even realize I'd been driving until I passed the diner on Jefferson that Sophie and I used to visit on slow Sunday mornings. I should have been angry, furious, but all I felt was this low, humming ache in my chest, like something had been quietly torn out, and my body was still trying to register the damage. Her words echoed like they'd been etched into the windshield. "You're predictable. I know every word you'll say before you say it." It was the way she said it. Like she was proud. Like I was some worn-out book she'd already read and shelved. I tightened my grip on the wheel, knuckles pale. The yellow glow of the streetlights painted fleeting shadows across the dashboard. They came and went like flashes of memory. Her face. Her tone. That smirk. Was it always there? Had I just been too trusting to see it? A red light caught me near the train station, and for a moment, I just sat there, engine idling, watching a few teens laughing as they crossed the street. I used to laugh like that with her. Back when we'd sneak cheap beer into drive-in movies and kiss under stadium lights after my softball games. I remembered the way she used to look at me, like I was solid ground. And now she made it sound like I was just routine. Like the structure I gave her became the prison she wanted out of. Predictable, I muttered aloud. Was that such a bad thing? Predictable meant steady. It meant I showed up. I stayed. Through layoffs, her panic attacks, her father's funeral. I was the guy who made sure there was always gas in her car and groceries in the fridge. But I guess when you're chasing sparks, you don't notice the hands holding the ladder steady beneath you. The light turned green. I didn't move. Cars honked behind me, and I waved an apology, forcing the accelerator down. I just needed air, space, somewhere to sit, and let this ache bleed out without her in the room staring like she was watching me unravel with detachment. Pulling into the parking lot behind the old middle school, I killed the engine and leaned back in the seat. The quiet was deafening. That was when the real question hit me. How long had she been pretending? How many dinners were fake smiles? How many nights did she pull away just a little sooner than she used to? How many "I love yous" had been said out of habit? I rubbed my eyes. The weariness wasn't just physical. It was this weight pressing down on every part of me. Like I'd been walking uphill for months, convinced we were building something, only to find out she'd been slipping downhill, one cold inch at a time. And now here I was, alone, trying to figure out what was real and what was just well-rehearsed comfort. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A notification. Not from Sophie. She hadn't called, hadn't texted, hadn't even checked to see if I'd come back home. No, it was just a weather alert. Cold front incoming. Too late. It had already arrived. I stared out at the empty field behind the school, lit faintly by the street lamps. I used to believe that love, real love, was a quiet, dependable thing. Something you showed up for, not shouted about. Maybe that's why she stopped noticing. Maybe in her mind, love needed drama to feel real. But me? I'd take peace over fireworks any day. And if she couldn't see the strength in that, then maybe she was right to leave. Because boring or not, I wasn't the one pretending. I never imagined myself sitting behind a defense table, wearing a suit that felt stiffer than my nerves, listening to strangers argue over the life I used to share with a woman who once knew everything about me. The courtroom was clean, clinical, pale wood walls, buzzing fluorescent lights, the distant shuffle of papers, and quiet murmur of voices. But the tension? You could slice it with a butter knife. Sophie was already seated across from me, dressed in all white, like that would somehow erase the damage. Her lawyer, some smug guy named Trent with slicked back hair and a voice like he'd practiced it in a mirror, was mid-monologue. "Your Honor, this is a textbook example of emotional neglect. My client, Sophie Wells, stood by for years while Mr. Wells, though materially consistent, withdrew emotionally from their marriage. She was made to feel invisible. Is it so wrong that she seeks her freedom from such a dynamic?" I caught Sophie's eyes for half a second. She smirked like the outcome was already written, like the house, the account, everything would fall into her lap just because she got to the courthouse first. But I didn't flinch. Neither did my attorney, Glenn Rogers, 60, sharp-eyed, and unshakably calm. He stood, buttoned his blazer, and walked toward the judge with a thick file in hand. "With all due respect, Your Honor," he began, "we're not here to debate feelings. We're here to determine truth. And the truth is this: Mr. Wells was the sole provider for the household for 10 years. He paid the mortgage, covered Sophie's student loans, paid off both cars. He cooked meals, managed the finances, and stayed committed through 2 years of her unemployment. He opened the file, spreading out documents like a poker player laying down a royal flush. Here are receipts, utility bills, credit card statements, tax returns. Each one in his name. Each one paid on time. And here," he flipped to a handwritten note, laminated. A letter from Sophie's own mother, testifying that Daniel cared for her daughter during a mental health crisis, without complaint or resentment. Sophie shifted in her chair. "Furthermore," Glenn continued, "we have text messages from Sophie, complaining to friends that Daniel was too stable, that he wasn't exciting enough, that she missed the thrill of uncertainty." The courtroom was silent. Glenn turned back to the judge. "Your Honor, we're not arguing that Sophie wants a divorce. That's her right. But we are arguing that Mr. Wells has done nothing to forfeit the home he built, maintained, and protected, and the court should not reward abandonment disguised as empowerment." Sophie's lawyers stood to object, but the judge raised her hand. "I've heard enough." The room fell still as Judge Anders leaned forward, scanning both tables with a cool, unreadable expression. "In matters of asset division," she said slowly, "we weigh history, conduct, and contribution. Mr. Wells, despite being called predictable, has demonstrated overwhelming consistency, responsibility, and emotional integrity." She turned to Sophie. "Mrs. Wells, your decision to end the marriage is not being judged, but your expectation to leave with both your independence and your husband's stability is. Sophie blinked. I'm granting Mr. Wells sole ownership of the marital home, effective immediately. You will vacate within 14 days. That smirk vanished, replaced by something far more fragile, disbelief. I felt my chest loosen for the first time in months, like someone had untied a knot I didn't even realize had formed behind my ribs. Sophie leaned toward her lawyer, whispering furiously, but the judge had already moved on. The gavel hit wood with a clean finality. I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and nodded respectfully to the judge before walking out, each step lighter than the one before. As I passed Sophie, she reached for my arm. Daniel, this isn't fair, she hissed. I paused, met her eyes. No, it's justice, I said quietly. And you're just not used to seeing it land in someone else's favor. Then I kept walking, out of that courtroom, out of her shadow, and for the first time in a long time, towards something that felt like peace. It was a Tuesday, uneventful, slow, just the way I liked it. The sun had dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows across the porch as I finished watering the flowers Lena had planted last spring. I could hear the gentle clink of dinner plates being set inside and a quiet hum of jazz floating from the kitchen window. Then the doorbell rang. One buzz, then two. Quick, hesitant. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked to the front door. Through the glass, I saw her, Sophie. Hair pulled back, face bare. No makeup, no war paint. Just Sophie, but worn down. Her eyes carried that weight I used to try so hard to lift. Only this time, I didn't feel responsible for it. I opened the door halfway, keeping my hand firmly on the knob. She smiled, small, sheepish. Hey, Daniel. I didn't smile back. It's been a while. 2 years, she said softly, stepping forward like she expected me to move aside. I didn't. She stopped just short of the threshold. Is something wrong? I asked. Her eyes flicked past me toward the hallway behind me, toward the life she no longer had access to. I've just been thinking about things, she said. A lot, actually. I waited. I know I was harsh and selfish, she went on. But these past couple of years, I've had time to really see things clearly. I haven't been able to connect with anyone. Not the way I did with you. Sophie, I know, she cut in quickly. You moved on. You earned that. But Daniel, her voice wavered, just enough to pull at something old in my chest. I've never loved anyone else in all this time, and I don't think I ever will. I didn't flinch, didn't look away. You loved being adored, I said quietly. You loved the attention, the feeling of being chosen. But love? That's something you build, not something you trade when you get bored. Her eyes glistened, and for a moment, the Sophie I used to know was there, vulnerable, trying to reach for something she'd already dropped too many times. I thought maybe we could just talk, she said. Maybe have dinner sometime. Not as anything. Just two people who once meant something. I took a breath and looked at her fully, not with anger, but with the kind of clarity that time earns you. I don't hate you, I said, but I don't owe you a conversation just because you're lonely. Her mouth dropped slightly. You're serious? I am, I replied. I don't wish you harm, but I don't welcome you back. Her face twisted, pain turning quickly to frustration. You'll regret this, Daniel. You really will. I gave a small nod, slowly closing the door. Maybe, but not tonight. The lock clicked gently into place. And just like that, the silence returned, but it wasn't empty. It was peaceful, full. The house felt like it was exhaling after holding its breath. I turned back toward the kitchen, where soft laughter and the smell of garlic were waiting. She was gone, and I was finally home. The following morning, I was back at my desk by 8, just like always. The office was quiet at that hour, just the click of keyboards, the hum of the coffee machine, and the faint scratch of pens on notepads. It was my sanctuary. I'd built this space from the ground up after the divorce. New clients, new team, new city even. Everything here had a freshness to it, a forward motion. Sophie didn't belong in this world. But around 9:30, I heard heels clicking fast against the tile floor. The pattern wasn't familiar, too sharp, too impatient. I looked up, and there she was. Sophie, hair curled this time, lip gloss, a jacket she used to wear when she wanted to make an impression. But her eyes, they were the same as yesterday. Tired, nervous, and searching. The moment she stepped into my office, my assistant rose from her desk just outside and froze mid-sentence. I'm sorry, sir. She just walked in. It's fine, Mel. I said quietly, standing slowly. You can give us a moment. Mel glanced between us, clearly unsure. I gave her a subtle nod. Once she disappeared around the corner, I folded my arms and met Sophie's gaze. You shouldn't be here. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I needed to see you. You did. Last night, I replied. She stepped closer, lowering her voice, eyes darting toward the glass walls. This isn't about last night. I didn't say everything. No, I said. You said too much. Sophie moved beside my desk, one hand brushing over a photo frame. Lena and I, laughing at a vineyard. She blinked, then turned her back to it. I know I ruined things, she said, her tone shifting, softer now, trembling. But Daniel, I'm not here to cause trouble. I haven't been okay. I've been really alone. I exhaled slowly, glancing toward the hallway. A few colleagues had paused, sensing tension through the glass. Their eyes flicked in and out of view, then quickly back to their monitors. You don't get to come here, I said, voice low but sharp. Not to this place. Not to this version of my life. She looked genuinely confused. I'm not trying to. This is pity, I cut in, wrapped in perfume and old memories. And it doesn't work here. The heat rose in my neck. I hated how her presence still stirred something. Not longing, not even resentment, but the leftover ache of someone who had once meant everything. Daniel, I'm not playing you. I raised an eyebrow. Aren't you? You say you're lonely, but what you want isn't me. You want the comfort I gave. The security. You want to be seen again, after fading from your own reflection. She went quiet. Lena isn't your rival, I added, calmer now. She's just the woman who showed me what love feels like when it's not a competition. Sophie's face twitched. A second passed, then another, and then she snapped. Her voice, low but bitter. You really think this is forever? That she won't get tired of your routine too? I didn't flinch. I don't need forever, I said. Just someone who chooses me without conditions. The hallway had grown quieter. My coworkers were pretending not to listen, but the air had changed. Everyone could feel the charge. Sophie straightened her shoulders, brushing invisible dust from her sleeve. You'll remember this moment, she said. When she leaves. When it all falls apart. You'll remember I tried. And with that, she spun on her heel and walked out, heels echoing against the floor louder than before. Mel peeked back around the corner a minute later, eyebrows raised. Everything okay? I nodded once. She won't be back. And just like that, the room exhaled. I sat back down at my desk, turned toward my screen, and picked up where I left off. Her storm had passed, and not a single paper had moved. That night, the quiet in the house didn't feel peaceful. It felt off. I was pacing, not thinking, pacing. The kind where your feet move faster than your thoughts, like they're trying to outrun something you can't quite name. The encounter at the office kept looping in my mind like a scene stuck on repeat. Her sudden appearance, the things she said, the way she knew where to find me. I never told Sophie where I worked. That detail hit me like a cold slap. She shouldn't have known. Not unless she looked it up. Not unless she followed. I rubbed my palms together, trying to shake the unease from my skin. The light in the hallway flickered once, a glitch I'd meant to fix but hadn't gotten around to. The little things suddenly felt important, like a house needed armor. My phone buzzed on the table. Lena, hey love, running late from yoga. Want me to grab dinner on the way? I stared at the message a second longer than I should have. My chest tightened. Lena. She didn't know anything about what had happened today. She hadn't been home when I returned, and I hadn't told her yet. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I didn't want to put that weight on her shoulders. Not until I understood it myself. But now I was wondering if waiting had been a mistake. I tapped a reply. No worries. Don't stop anywhere. Just come straight home. 3 dots blinked, then stopped. I slid the phone into my pocket and sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on knees, hands steepled under my chin. I wasn't worried about myself. I'd faced Sophie head on, and I hadn't blinked. That part was done. But Lena? She was kind. Open. The type of person who hugged the neighbors and remembered their dogs' names. She didn't build walls. She opened doors. And Sophie? She knew how to slip through open doors like a breeze that turns into a draft. My stomach turned at the thought of the two of them crossing paths without warning. What if Sophie showed up at Lena's yoga studio? What if she followed her? What if this wasn't just about me anymore? I stood again and began moving through the house, checking things I hadn't checked in months. Door locks, camera batteries, I even walked out to the porch and stood there for a few seconds longer than necessary, scanning the street like it might confess something. Nothing. Just wind through the trees and porch lights flicking on across the street. But that chill in my spine? It stayed. The kind you get when you know something isn't over. It's just shifted. I grabbed my jacket and pulled Lena's blanket off the back of the couch. It still smelled like her, lavender and something soft I couldn't name. I folded it slowly and set it neatly aside, suddenly protective of even the smallest things tied to her. I wasn't scared, but I was alert, because Sophie didn't knock on my office door today out of nostalgia. She was checking for cracks, and if she thought Lena was one, then I had to make sure there were none. I sat by the window and waited, listening for her car, the gravel crunch, the key in the lock. I didn't care about Sophie's loneliness, but I cared, deeply, about Lena's peace. And I'd fight to keep it unbroken. The morning started like any other, coffee brewing, sun leaking through the kitchen blinds, the smell of Lena's shampoo still lingering in the hallway. But peace doesn't always announce when it's leaving. I was scrolling through my phone, half awake, sipping from a chipped ceramic mug Lena had insisted we keep, even after the handle broke. That's when I saw it. The first post. It wasn't tagged. Not directly, but it was her. The photo was one I'd taken on a trip to Asheville. Lena standing by a mural, laughing, the wind pulling her hair across her face. Underneath, the caption read, "Hard to preach self-love when you've made a habit of stealing other people's husbands. Ask her how many lives she's ruined." No names, just venom. And then came the comments. She did the same thing to my friend's fiancé. Classic yoga studio manipulator vibe. Homewrecker energy. My grip on the phone tightened. A few swipes revealed another post. Same photo, different edit. This time it had her studio's name tagged in the background. Just blurry enough to deny intent, but obvious enough to plant the idea. The hashtags made me sick. Hashtag not what she seems. Hashtag fake empowerment. Hashtag women watch out. I froze. For a second, I just sat there. Then the rage came. Sharp. White hot. No hesitation. I slammed the mug down on the counter. Coffee splashed onto the tile. I didn't even flinch. She did it. Sophie. This wasn't some random jealous ex or anonymous troll. This was surgical. Strategic. Personal. And worse, it was public. I paced the length of the kitchen, the floor cold beneath my bare feet. My phone buzzed again. Text now. One from a friend I hadn't spoken to in months. "Hey man, is this about your girlfriend?" Another from Lena's studio assistant. "Just wanted you to know, there's weird stuff going around. I'm pulling down tags for now." Lena hadn't seen it yet. She was still in the shower upstairs, probably humming one of those soft acoustic songs she liked. I wanted to warn her, but I didn't know how. I didn't want to taint her morning with this garbage, but I also knew I couldn't shield her from it forever. Sophie hadn't come to the door looking for closure. She came to see how close we were, to measure the walls, to check for weaknesses. And now, she'd found one she thought she could exploit, not by attacking me, but by dragging Lena through the mud, publicly, cruelly, with just enough anonymity to make it slippery. It wasn't just slander. It was strategy. She wanted Lena to feel watched, unwelcome, unsafe. She wanted me to question what I'd built. I marched to the living room, opened my laptop, and started pulling screenshots. Everything. Every comment. Every post. I didn't care how anonymous the usernames were. I recognized Sophie's style like fingerprints on glass. The polished cruelty. The sanctimony disguised as warning. The calculated language meant to hurt without ever naming names. And worst of all, it was working. The post already had dozens of likes. Shares. Quiet whispers forming their own storm. My jaw clenched as I stared at Lena's smiling face, now being used like a dartboard for someone else's jealousy. This woman, who never took more than she gave, who lit up every room she walked into, was now being labeled a thief. Because Sophie couldn't stand that someone had picked up the pieces she threw away and made them into something better. Behind me, I heard the shower stop, the creak of the bathroom door, light footsteps on the stairs. I closed the laptop gently. This wasn't the time for panic. This was the time to protect. But inside, my hands were already fists. Because Sophie had crossed a line. And I wasn't going to let her smear the one person who reminded me what real love looked like. Not now. Not ever. By noon, we were sitting across from each other at a quiet cafe near the park. The kind of place Lena liked. Small tables, soft lighting, brick walls lined with secondhand books. But today, She wasn't looking at the books. She wasn't looking at me either. She was staring down at the untouched tea in front of her, hands folded tightly in her lap, knuckles pale. I saw it, she said quietly. I'd barely had time to sit before she broke the silence. I leaned forward. Lena, she shook her head. Don't tell me not to worry. Please don't do that right now. Her voice cracked, and just like that, the strength she always carried with such grace began to tremble. I don't even know who some of these people are, she whispered. But they're sharing it. My photo. That stupid mural picture. They're making it sound like I know. She finally looked up, eyes glassy, red-rimmed. You do? She asked. Because it doesn't feel like you do. It feels like I'm sitting in the middle of a digital wildfire while you're calmly watching it burn. I sat back slightly, breathing through the urge to argue. I've been documenting everything, I said. Screenshots. IP traces. It's her, Lena. I'm not just guessing. Of course it's her, she snapped. Who else would be this bitter and this precise? But that doesn't change the fact that it's out there. People believe it. I reached for her hand. She pulled it back. She came to my studio, Daniel. I blinked. What? Yesterday, after I left for work. Stacy saw her through the glass, said she stood outside for a few minutes. Didn't come in, just stared, and left. My jaw tightened. I could feel that protective fire rise in my chest again. She's trying to get to you through me. Lena continued, voice quieter now, more tired. It's not about the past anymore. It's about power. I nodded slowly. She wants to scare you. It's working, she admitted, biting her lower lip to keep it from trembling. I've never had someone lie like this about me. Publicly. With such confidence. And the worst part? You knew she was like this. That hit hard. I didn't think she'd go this far, I said, voice low. But you're right. I should have warned you. She stared at me for a long moment. You still have feelings for her? No. The answer came out fast. Too fast. Lena flinched like she didn't believe it. Or maybe just didn't trust how easily I said it. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. Lena, listen to me. I don't love her. I don't miss her. I don't want anything from her. But I do regret not shielding you sooner. She exhaled, blinking away the tears. Then do it now, she said. Don't play it safe. Don't let her keep control by pretending this will blow over. Because it won't. I nodded. It won't. She finally reached across the table, her fingers lacing with mine, slow but steady. We're not letting her win, I said firmly. She looked at me, hopeful but fragile. Promise. I squeezed her hand. We will not let her win. The clinking of cups, the low hum of conversation, the smell of cinnamon and espresso, it all wrapped around us like background noise to a fragile truce. The damage had been done, but we were still sitting across from each other, still choosing not to walk away. And in that moment, that was enough. If you're enjoying the story, please hit the like button. It was nearly noon, but the sky was heavy, gray, the kind of overcast that made everything feel slower, colder. I was parked 2 blocks down from the cafe where Lena was meeting her. Sophie. Lena insisted on doing it alone. It has to be just me, she said that morning. She won't gloat unless she thinks I'm cornered. I hated it. I hated knowing she was going into that room pretending to be broken, pretending to give up, pretending to walk away from me. But I understood. Sophie wouldn't confess anything to me, not if I dragged her into court, not if I stood on her porch with a megaphone. But Lena? Hurt, vulnerable, defeated Lena? That was bait Sophie wouldn't resist. Still, my grip on the steering wheel hadn't relaxed since I parked. I kept watching the door. People came and went. No sign of either of them. My phone stayed quiet. I imagined 1,000 outcomes, and none of them made my heart beat any slower. What if Sophie saw through it? What if she lashed out? What if Lena got hurt? Not physically, but emotionally. Sophie knew how to twist the knife. She didn't scream. She smiled while cutting deep. I checked the time. They'd been in there almost 40 minutes. The worst part? I had to trust that the woman I loved could lie, just well enough, to expose the one who lived in lies. The minutes dragged. An hour passed. Then, finally, the bell above the cafe door jingled. Lena stepped out. Alone. She walked calmly, head up, not rushing, but there was something in her pace. Purpose. I jumped out of the car before she even reached the corner. Her eyes locked on mine. She gave a single nod, lips pressed together, like she didn't want to give anything away out here in the open. We waited until we were back in the car. Doors shut. No words. She let out a long breath. She admitted everything, Lena said. I blinked. What? Lena turned to me, and now the smile came, tired but proud. She said she created the posts, said she needed to shake me loose, called me a temporary complication. I just kept playing the role, kept my voice low, told her I was tired. She leaned in like we were sharing secrets and said, he doesn't belong with you. He's better when he's fixing broken things, and I broke him first. My jaw clenched. She actually said that? She said she followed you for weeks, waited outside my studio, tracked my socials. She said you'd come back to her once I cracked. Lena's voice dropped. She really believed it. I stared out the windshield, rage crawling up the back of my neck like a flame I couldn't shake. She's unwell, I said quietly. She's desperate, Lena replied. And she finally thought she won. Did you record it? I asked. She nodded, pulled her phone from her pocket, and tapped the screen. Everything. Clear audio. You can hear her voice. Her words. I couldn't speak. I just stared at her. This woman who walked into fire not to save herself, but to protect us. She smiled faintly. You okay? I reached over, cupped her cheek gently, and said what I hadn't said since the beginning of this madness. I'm lucky you're mine. Her eyes glistened. No, she whispered. We're lucky we didn't let her turn us into something we're not. I kissed her forehead. We're not broken. She never stood a chance. Outside the car, the city kept moving, taxis rushing, kids laughing, lives being lived. Inside the car, two people sat still, finally reclaiming what someone else tried so hard to tear apart. It was just past 9 when the doorbell rang. We were on the couch, Lena curled against me, the lights low, a movie half forgotten on the screen. The knock came once, then again, sharper. Lena looked up at me. We didn't speak. We already knew. She rose slowly, brushing her hair behind her ear, calm as ever. Then she opened the door, and there stood Sophie, dressed like a caricature of someone half her age, leather skirt, too much perfume, lips glossed to shine. The desperation wasn't in the outfit. It was in her eyes. Before she could speak, Lena smiled, sweet, sharp. Honey, she called over her shoulder. Your ex is here. Looks like she's begging you to take her back. I stood, took my time walking toward the door. Sophie's eyes flicked between us, lips parting. Daniel, can we talk? Alone? I didn't answer. Just reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and tapped play. Her voice filled the doorway, crystal clear. He's better when he's fixing broken things, and I broke him first. You don't belong with him. He'll come back to me once you crack. Sophie froze. Her cheeks flushed, then paled. You recorded me? I didn't, I said, stepping beside Lena. She did. You were looking for cracks, Sophie. But you talked yourself into a corner. She tried to laugh. This is illegal. No, it's admissible, I cut in. Especially when it's used in a harassment case. Or a restraining order. Her face twitched. You wouldn't. Oh, I would, I said. And the court? The court will love this. She clenched her jaw. You're making a mistake. She's not who you think. I know exactly who she is, I replied. She's the woman who stood up for me when you tried to tear me down. Sophie looked at me, then Lena. Her voice cracked. I still love you. I stared at her, steady. I don't. And I shut the door. No more games. No more ghosts. Just the sound of the lock clicking closed, and the warmth of Lena's hand in mine. The courtroom was quiet when the judge gave her ruling. Sophie didn't say a word. She just stared down at the table, lips pressed into a thin line, shoulders drawn inward like the weight of her choices had finally settled. The restraining order was granted. The damages for defamation? Approved. The recordings? Submitted, verified, and noted in the official record. She tried to withdraw the posts, delete the accounts, backpedal the story. But it was too late. The court didn't care about second thoughts, only evidence. And we had it. She left the city not long after. No goodbye, no warning, just gone. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt done. And peace? It came quietly, not all at once, but in the sound of Lena's laugh coming from the kitchen, in the way we cooked together without saying much, just moving in rhythm, in the space between us that no longer held tension, only calm. Months passed. Then came that evening. A hilltop just outside the city, golden grass swaying in the breeze. The sun dipping low, painting the sky in amber and rose. Lena stood barefoot on a picnic blanket, her curls dancing in the wind, her smile easy and unguarded. I took a step forward, then knelt. She froze. I didn't say much. Just the words that had been sitting in my chest since the day she looked Sophie in the eye and refused to flinch. Not because we're perfect, I said, but because we fought for peace. And we found it, together. Her eyes filled, lips parting as I held out the ring. She nodded before she even spoke. And when she whispered yes, I slipped it on her finger, and we both laughed. Loud, light, free. No shadows. No weight. Just wind, sky, and the future we'd earned. Together. And that was the end of the story. When Sophie showed up at my office, uninvited and spinning a story about loneliness, she crossed a line. But was she really trying to come back, or just trying not to be forgotten? If you've ever seen someone do what she did, show up when they're no longer welcome, did they do it for love or control? Let me know in the comments. And if you felt this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. There's more to come.